Welcome back to Roll the Dice, the show where two mates sit down, pick 6 topics across punting, music, sport, and life, and let the chaos take the wheel. Today's guest is a bloke who's lived more lives than most people get the chance to imagine. A chef who cooked his way through Asia and Hawaii, a business owner who became part of the fabric of Port Macquarie, a sports tragic who's represented Australia in OzTag, and now a driving force behind men's mental wellness with Self-Seen. He's got stories, he's got scars, laughs, and lessons. Exactly the kind of guest we love on this show. So, Troy, let's roll the dice with Greg
Roll the
Smith.
dice. Greg, welcome to Roll the Dice, mate. You've got a lot of stories to tell, and there's a lot still in front of you, mate. So we're going to be really excited to hear some of the things from the past and what's going to happen in now and the future, mate. So welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Paul and Troy. I appreciate you asking me to come on. Still want me on here, but yeah, I'm happy to participate and I guess give an insight into my journey and the ups and downs of it.
Yeah, good, mate. We probably could get into where you are, who you are, but I think what we might do is just do that as we're rolling the dice and let people discover you. As in my case, I'll be discovering you as well. I've done a small bit of research on you. Troy vouches for you, reckons you're a good guy. But I think there are some really important subjects that we can get onto as we delve into this. Before we start rolling dice, as usual, we've got to acknowledge our sponsors, and the first being Track Intel. If you want to know what's going on the track, you've got to download the data from Instagram and Facebook, and that comes out every week, whether it's Doomben, Flemington, Randwick, or even Scone. We've got data on through Track Intel for you to have a bit of a punt on. I want to acknowledge I want to acknowledge the people from Feel Good Collective. This is Sydney's hottest, newest, and safest gym based in Roseville. Honestly, I firmly believe you look these guys up, and if you're in the area, and even if you're not in the area, get down there. It is one of the best things to happen in personal training and fitness. We've got Glamworm Waste Equipment, the leader in waste equipment in Australia, and of course our new guys, Tony Perino Engineering. If you've got a breakdown with your fleet, Tony Perino Engineering, they'll come as far as Port Macquarie. They'll come as far as they need you, as long as you pay. So, so we're going to roll the dice. I'm really not sure where this dice is going to land, Troy, but we'll see how we go. And Troy, you're the one asking the questions. Do you have them in front of you?
Yes, I do, mate. Let's go. Wow. What's I'm very, very well prepared tonight, mate. Usually I'm scrambling for them. So we've got them tonight.
Outstanding work. I'll do the numbers.
Yes.
All right. It's landed on a 2, mate.
On a 2. So, mate, Greg, you've cooked across Asia, a little bit of time in Hawaii. What's a song or album that instantly takes you back to those kitchens, mate?
Song. That's an eclectic little question there, Troy. I mean,
yes. These deep questions, mate. Straight in there, mate. You tell us about your music.
I think if I'm thinking of a song, I don't know who the artist is, but there was definitely this like classic. I've always tried to keep an open mind when it comes to music, and in the early '90s, it was house music in Sydney and that whole scene in the hospitality industry. We were dance clubs and stuff like that, and Mardi Gras and the whole shebang. So we loved a good house party and rave. But in Hawaii, I got introduced to a completely different type of music, and it was, it's the classic big, I don't know, 180, 140, 160 kilo Hawaiian with a tiny little guitar known as a ukulele, and just listening to the melody and the beautiful
here we go.
sound of this
Yeah.
guy, just sitting around having a beer in a park, and like it's nothing. They'll just grab a ukulele and just start singing, and their voices are just like angels, and you just can't help but go, "How lovely is that?" Like it's you just can't help but dig it. It's so nice, so amazing. So that when I think of Hawaii, that's what I think of as music-wise. This big Hawaiian dude with a tiny little ukulele under his arm. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Mate, I know that one threw you to start with. So let's talk about what got you into the kitchen, mate. How old were you when you thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do for a little while in my life?
Yeah, so it was an interesting story. I was growing up in Sydney, in the wonderful outer suburb of Penshurst, and my mother was quite a successful hairdresser, and she had 2 or 3 salons, and she was one of the first female apprentice hairdressers in Sydney. Because back in those days, they were all men, which a lot of people don't realise. And so she got an apprenticeship and she did it, and then she was quite successful. She started opening up her own salons, and then I would have been about maybe 9, I think, or 8 or 9 or something, when Mum went to bed perfectly fine, and then woke up the next day swollen from head to toe. And it was the 70s; no one really knew what it was, or so she went to have these tests, and my dad, the sister, and I didn't really know what was going on. And it turned out she had a very rare form of rheumatoid arthritis, and it was attacking her whole system, and it was crippling her. And she pretty much had to give up the hairdressing and the salons, and she still did some hair at home and stuff like that. But back in the day, they said, to stop the swelling of the joints, they could replace them. So she would spend, weeks in hospital, having joint replacement in the knuckles. She had plastic knuckles, plastic joints in the feet. And in the 70s, this was just, it's not like it was today. Like I don't even think they do that today. It was kind of crazy stuff back then. But my dad was working long hours. He would get home. I'd be sitting around watching, Doctor Who and Cat Weasel eating Weet-Bix until he got home at 5 o'clock, and my sister would be studying. I didn't like study, so I just watched TV. And he came through the door one night and he just got the shits, and he was just obviously stressed and frustrated. But back then we didn't know what that was when we were young. And he said, you guys need to start helping around the house. Like I would have been 8 or 9, my sister would have been 10. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, well, you could start by, because pretty much every night we'd go, he'd pick us up, we'd go to the hospital, come back, and we'd basically have fish and chips on the way home or something like that. He said, maybe you can start cooking, make us dinner, just prepare something so I don't have to go back out again. I said, yeah, okay. So we'll give me some money. So I went to school the next day and, had a Greek mate whose dad owned the fruit and veg shop. So we went there first, and we, on the way home from school, and got a few things, and then went to the butcher shop next door, and then I cooked dinner. And I would have been, 9 years of age, maybe. Pretty sure I used every pot, pan, and whatever it was in the kitchen at the time, and the sink was full. And Dad came home and he looked at the place and he just went, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, this is dinner." And we sat down, and it was inedible, whatever it was. I don't even remember what it was, but we ended up going out for fish and chips. And then the next day, I asked him for some more money. He said, "What for?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do this once. I know where I went wrong. I need to do this again." So I started cooking a few meals at home, and got a bit of help from the local fruit and veg and butchers, the ladies there, and they knew Mum was in hospital, and so I started to cook a little bit. But then when Mum finally, I guess, recovered a bit to become a mum again, she asked me to she said, thanks for doing this, but you don't have to do this anymore. Go back to being, you know, a boy. And we ended up moving to Sawtell when I was probably 12 or 13 to get to warmer weather for her. And I just had the bug for food. So that's what sort of drove me when it was, you know, when I realised I wasn't going to be an academic and go to university. I decided this was my way out of school, was to get an apprenticeship as a chef. So that's what got me there.
And so the apprenticeship, mate, where was your apprenticeship at? So in Sydney?
No.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story and something I haven't heard, mate. So
so we moved to Sawtell, and I finished my schooling. And then I basically started my apprenticeship at a beachside resort up there called Nautilus, and did sort of a year there, and then left there, and then went somewhere else, and then actually got transferred to Port Macquarie at one point, and did an apprenticeship, part of my apprenticeship at the country company in Port. Then got sent out to Tamworth, and then back to Coffs again, and then by the time I'd finished my apprenticeship, I was still 19. I'd done my 4 years. And I had no idea. I thought, I'm a qualified chef now, and I thought, yeah, sweet, I can make garlic prawns, and I can, bang out a steak and a salad, and, I had really no real idea of how shit a chef I was. Like, I didn't know. But I ended up moving to Sydney, and I thought I'd get a job in Sydney, right? And that's when I found out how shit I really was. I applied for a job at Bilson's at Circular Quay. Tony Bilson's probably one of the most well-known chefs in Sydney back in those days, and it was right where the boat terminal is. And he wasn't cooking in the kitchen there, but there was a head chef there called Peter Kuravitas. And Pete, great chef. I went for the interview. I remember going in there, and there was probably 30 chefs sitting in there waiting to be interviewed. And they all looked like they're about 30 years older than me. And it was only for a chef de parties role, which is a sectional leader on the seafood section. Anyway, I somehow talked my way into this job, and Pete gave it to me. And I reckon within 2 weeks, I realised I was just completely out of my depth. Like, to the point where the apprentice on the section under me, who'd been there for 4 months, knew more than me. That's how different the levels were of food from the coast to the city. And I tried to fumble my way through, like I always do, and I thought, I've just got to really learn quickly here and pick stuff up and try and, get it together. And anyhow, we were having service one day in the kitchen, and there was a delivery at the back door, and it was seafood, so I got called over. So I signed for it and just quickly checked everything, and then went back to service because lunch had started. And it was New Zealand scampi and something else. And so I'd never seen live seafood before. Everything that's coming I'd ever seen was dead, when even living in Coffs and supposedly near the ocean. So I thought the bloody things were dead, and they were just sitting on ice. So I'm cooking away. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something run underneath the oven, like the bank of stoves and ovens, and I saw something dart under the oven, and I thought, did I just see something? I thought, I must be something wrong, so I kept going, and then I saw another one. Anyway, I looked over. The scampi were just basically asleep on the ice. They were fresh. They'd just been flown in from New Zealand, and that's the level of this place was. I'd left the lid off enough that they'd warmed up and gone, we'll go for a run. So they've all climbed out, like about 8 of them have climbed out the top of the box, and they're running around underneath the ovens and stuff like that. And I am panicking because I'm like, So I'm running around grabbing these scampi, trying to get them back in there, biting my hands and stuff like that. And I thought I got away with it. And then the next day they called me into the chef's office, because there was a chef's office there and there was a glass window. and he basically told me I was out of my depth. And he's kind of smiling at the end, and I'm thinking that's really weird that he's smiling when he's sacking me. And he goes, but I have to tell you, he said, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen, you chasing those scampi yesterday in the kitchen. I said, did you see that? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, it was funny as shit. It was funny. It was so funny. And I went, okay. So I was pretty devoted. I remember going home, and I mean, I was devastated at the point where I literally sat on the end of the bed and cried, because I thought, I've just wasted 4 years of my life doing a trade, thinking, being taught by equally shit chefs, and thinking that I actually knew how to cook. And I felt like, what am I going to do now? I was really lost. I was really just disheartened, and yeah, I just felt, what do I sort of do? You know, so it was a really tough period of my life. I got quite depressed over it. Yeah, it was a struggle.
And how did you pick yourself up, mate, and motivate yourself to go, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then who gave you that opportunity?
Yeah, so I ended up taking a job. I just looked at whatever job. I got a catering manager's job because I knew I had a good head for certain things in management. So I took this catering manager's job at the Australian airport, at Sydney Airport, and it was running a kitchen there that had one side had the pilots, and it was back in the day before there was terrorists, so you could just jump the bench and go around, you know, like it wasn't, tarmac was right, that there was no security, it was nothing. But it was just big one pot cooking and fried stuff, and it was like a canteen basically. And I did that for probably 3 months, and I hated it, and I hated being around that food, and so I just thought, you know, I quit, and I went and did something. And I just thought I'll just go and get another job in a kitchen and just see how I go. And I just slowly started working in these kitchens, and I went out west to Parramatta, and I got a job at Courtney's Brasserie, and I started working in there. And same thing again, I kind of talked my way into the job. You know Courtney's?
Yes, sir. I sure do. What year are we talking about here?
So we would be talking early to mid 90s. Kim was the owner.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Kim.
Can I just digress for a second here? Troy Cookie, who we had on as a 2-minute guest the other week, he was a maitre d' at Barnaby's down the road. So Courtney's and Barnaby's were very close back in those days. So sorry, Greg, I interrupted, but you just got me all excited.
you got him, because Paul's a Western Sydney boy, mate, so he knows all about it.
No, that's okay, because it was very much the jewel of the West. Courtney's, you know, they featured in Sydney Morning Herald, Good Food Guides and stuff like that. And Kim taught it. He really did everything he could to try and put food on the map in Parramatta. And I mean, if you look at it today, it's just, you know, food in Parramatta is amazing. The Beach Street and all the rest of it. But yeah, he just ran a really good restaurant. He had some good chefs in there. And one of the guys I learned from was Ben Levsan. And Ben sort of left probably, I don't know, 3 months after my stint, and they brought in a new head chef. And then Ben went up to run a new project for Kim, which was called Andrew's Townhouse, which was up at Richmond near the airbase. And him and his wife Karen were running that, and Ben needed some help, and I put my hand up because I preferred Ben's style of cooking and the way he managed than the new guy. So I went to help out up there. And he really taught me a lot. And I opened up with Ben and told him all of the issues that I had in the training. He said, don't worry, I'll bring you up to speed. And he did. And then he said, I've taken you as far as I can. And he goes, you need to learn further. You need to get under some good chefs. And he spotted the ad for a sous chef at the Bathers Pavilion at Balmoral. And he encouraged me to apply for it, which I did. And again, got the role. And that's when I met Mark Ryan. and I worked as the sous chef there for a couple of years, and before I went to Asia. So it was pretty much, I convinced myself to I'm doing my training again. I'm just bullshitting a little bit along the way through, I guess, a mature management approach to the kitchen. So I was able to do and handle a lot of the management side of things comfortably. It was more I just knew I wasn't as polished as some of the other young cooks that have been working under some really good people. So I was trying to catch up on that side and not show my hand on the other. You know what I mean? Not show my hand on that side, but kind of wing my way through the rest of it. And it was great. I had a great time doing it. But yeah, they're great. They're still great mentors for me today. Like Ben and Karen started Lavosh, Currajon Kitchens. They did the Lavosh bread, and he's got a massive organisation. And Mark, I still keep in contact with regularly as well. But yeah, that was kind of how I got kind of bounced back. And it was interesting because Peter Kuravitas came in one day for lunch on a Sunday lunch, who was the head chef at Bilson's when the Scampi escaped. And I saw him come in, and we were cooking that day, and I was running the pass and doing all the seafood and that. And we finished service, and I thought, stuff it, I'm going to go out. And I went out to the table, and I said, I just wanted to come out and see a few guys. Occasionally we go out to the tables, but not often. And I thought, I'm just going to go out and say, hey, mate, did you enjoy your lunch? You know, how was everything? And he went, yeah, it was great. Look, it was freaking fantastic. And he was kind of looking at me, and I said, do you remember me? And he goes, your face is familiar. And I said, do you remember Scampi escaping at Bilson's and me having to chase him? And he just burst out laughing. And he just said, mate, I'm so stoked that you did the full circle and you've made it back here, because you've literally done it, you know. So that was really good for me. That was a really good moment where I had, I guess, coming from someone like Peter, who I respected a lot, I got that real feel of that real sense that I had actually achieved something, and I guess I was worthy to cook in the kitchen, and that's something I lacked a lot of confidence.
Give us a list of where you've been. We're talking Indonesia, Thailand, a little bit in Hawaii. Give us a list, and what was the feature of those places?
So I pretty much finished up at Bader's, and I was doing a short stint at Mark Ryan had left, and then I didn't really gel with the next head chef, so I left, and I went and cooked at a bistro, a French bistro in Potts Point down the bottom of the Cross. Great spot if you want to go for a drink after work. And back in the day, we used to have the Vogue magazines, like Vogue Entertaining and stuff like that. When there was no internet, there was none of that stuff. So I'd seen this thing about Aman Resorts, which was this boutique hotel chain in Southeast Asia, and really impressed with what I read. And so I ended up writing them a letter and just saying if there's any jobs going on, I'm keen. And middle of service one night, I get a call from this German guy, Ralph Olitz, and he said, we've got a new project we're doing in Java, in West Java, in Bundle. And he said, I'd love to send you a ticket to come and have a look at it. I'd never been overseas. I had to get a passport. And I just went, yep, no worries. So jumped on a plane, went to Java and checked out. It was just pretty much a site. Like, it hadn't even been completed, the hotel. And that's where I started my career in Asia, was in Bandung. And we opened that hotel and ran that hotel for a few years. And then I ended up in Thailand, in Phuket, with the same mob. And then I went from Thailand to the stint in Hawaii, because they were going to turn some property over there. It was a crazy old property. It's, for anyone that knows Maui, there's a special place over there called Hana, which is Hana's right on the back of Maui, and it's these 50 one-lane bridges. It's a winding road all the way out to Hana, and it's a beautiful place. It's got sacred, pools and stuff like that. And it was actually for the sporting nuts. It was the New York Yankees. It was the owner of the New York Yankees back in, we're talking 40s or 50s. In the off season, he wanted the team to escape the media. So he built a ballpark out there. And he built these little cabins along the side, and he took the team out there, and they would train in the off season out in this freaking ballpark. And the ballpark's still there in the middle of the hotel, in the hotel grounds. The cabins ended up becoming, first of all, I think the primary school there. Then it became, something else and something else. But the ballpark still remains and will always remain there. And then the hotel itself slowly got built around it, and it was even on that. You remember that Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? The hotels of the Lifestyles.
I was never on it, sorry, mate.
Yeah.
It was a cheesy American hotels of the Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous, and it was on one of those. But when we got there, it was so run down, and we were trying to pick up the pieces and keep it going. But yeah, I was there for about 9 months, and yeah, tough gig, real tough gig.
Mate, I can tell you who that artist was, and that's Israel Kemakawai Wadahali Hirololi. Kemakawai Wadahali. You know what I mean? That bloke. Yeah, people can say it really good. I can't tonight, so there you go. I don't want to insult him. That, mate, you've got so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
We might move on to the next question. But we've left you in Hawaii, and you've certainly got through Asia. So I think we might be able to probably move on to the next part. Troy, I think one lead. I think it's just landed on one, and I think one probably covers a little bit more of what Greg wants to talk about.
100%. So, mate, you've lived a life full of risk, and just the story about what you've achieved through just being a chef, mate. It's insane. But what's the biggest punt you've taken that wasn't on a betting slip, mate?
Wow.
I don't hear you speechless often, mate.
Probably after Hawaii, I went back to Asia with Aman and stuff like that, and I worked in Yogyakarta, and I helped them open a property there. But I was still very much sort of in the kitchen, and then when I got to Jogja, it was more of a sort of a project work, sort of, because the hotel wasn't open. They had a head chef who was Indonesian, so I was accidentally ended up being in the project management team side of things. So I guess I was starting to look towards more of that. And then I came back home, and we opened the beach house in Port Macquarie in '99. And then when that sort of went pear-shaped with some partner issues, I was kind of getting lost, not sure what to do. And the company actually found out that the business hadn't gone that well. And so they offered me a role to come back, but this time not as a chef, but as a GM and managing the hotel. And it was a 20-tented camp, $1,000 US a night. So you can imagine, like, only accessible by seaplane, off the coast of Sumbawa. And I'd been to the property before. I'd visited the property before, and I just didn't think I had what it took to do. And again, they asked me to come and have a look, and I went out there, and I'm walking around, and I was getting more and more anxious as the days went on, because there was a lot of work to do. There's a lot of renovations to do. There was village issues. There had been a strike by the staff. There was, reef bombing by, dodgy people. There was just so many things. It wasn't like running a hotel in Sydney. It was a big job, and you had to have big shoes, and you needed to be smart in the way you approached it all. And I just didn't feel like I had it. And I remember sitting with the chairman at the time, Adrian Zecker, who's an absolute legend in the hotel industry, and he had a cigar in his hand, and he was just like, so what do you think? And I went, I don't think I'm the right person. I said, I don't think I can do this. And he just looked at me and said, well, I think you can. And that was it. And he said, so I think you can, so I think you're going to do it. And he just basically told me to do it. And so I felt like that was a really, from a career perspective, that was I really put myself in an area where I felt I was out of my depth, and I felt like, I took a pun on it, but it was a good pun. It was a beautiful property, amazing people. Went through some shitty times with Bali bombings and all that sort of stuff, but it was still just an amazing experience, and I'm glad I did it.
When you said shitty times, Bali bombings, is that something you want to delve into?
It was just really hard because when we got there, the previous company that had owned the property had always been owned by Armour Resorts, but then a Russian company had bought, an American company had bought the Armour Resorts during a period of time, and Adrian was through a boardroom scuffle had gone. So a lot of the philosophies had gone with it, and they kind of ransacked the property a little bit and hadn't spent much money. So there was a lot of work in bringing it back to its original, original look and up to that level where people are willing to pay $1,000 US a night to stay there. So it was a lot of work, a lot of stuff with the staff, but it just felt like we were trying to build this thing up, and then we had guests coming. It was really good. We were very much a dive resort, so we had about 8 or 9 boats. So to put it in perspective, we had 20 tents and we had 166 staff. So we had staff that looked after staff. We had 60 staff in our cruises department looking after all the boats. We had 3 gensets providing all our own power. We had pumping our own water. So we were very much a living organism out on this island. So there was always something happening. But we were getting some really good clients back, and coming there to dive and stuff. And I remember leaving the hotel one night after having drinks with guests and stuff, and working out their dive plan for the next day and different activities. And that came home, and I switched on the TV, and I went in to have a shower, and I grabbed a beer, and I saw the plane hit the tower, and I thought it was just a movie. And then, remembering that on this island, the only TV on the island was in my house. There was no other TVs on the island. There was no other communication because it was so remote. We had a satellite phone. So none of the guests knew what was happening. And I didn't know what was happening at first. And then when it replayed, I turned CNN up, and that's when I found out that it was the World Trade Center bombing. And that's when my phone started to go from the managers in the Bali properties, because we had guests staying in our hotel who were American. One couple were on their honeymoon, and he worked in the World Trade Center. And another guy who was a return guest and who'd been with us many times, him and his wife, his office was probably 3-4 blocks from the World Trade Center building. So we had to make a decision. Did we tell them tonight and wake them up and tell them tonight there was nowhere they could go? There was no way getting off the island. And the decision was made to just let them sleep, and then I would meet them the next morning, breakfast. And that was I didn't get any sleep out. I felt sick to my stomach of how I was going to talk to these people and tell them about it all. So yeah, so we went through all of that, and we got through that, and bearing in mind too, we had, I would say 80% of our staff was Muslim, and the one thing about the Indonesian Muslim people, extremely beautiful people, they're passive. They were so upset. Some of them would come to me and say, I don't understand. There's nowhere in the Quran where it tells you we can do this. We're not supposed to do this. How can they say they're Muslim? So it was a very tricky situation. You've got Westerners staying with you that have lost family, friends. They're feeling guilty about being away. You've got, it's a terrorist attack by Muslims, and we've got Muslim staff. So it was just a really tough time. It was really hard to navigate. How do you act? What do you say? There's no rule book for this. I'm just winging it as I go along. And so that really put a dent on the number of people coming to Southeast Asia for a while. Like a lot of travel stopped, especially high-end travel. So we kind of went back down again occupancy-wise, which made it really hard with the staff. And then SARS happened. I don't know if you guys remember SARS, but that was a thing. It was a bird flu type thing. Kind of, because we had a seaplane, a float plane. You're up nice and close. A lot of places wouldn't cover insurance and stuff like that, so that banged it. And then, another 4 months later, Bali bombing, and that really nailed us. So we were in one of the most remote places. We were safe, but we were just so affected by these things, and as the world was. But it's really hard when you're trying to motivate 160 staff that rely on service charge, things like that for their families, and you're trying to get them up for it, and then something happens and it just wipes away. So that's what I say was probably the struggle.
Troy, I reckon we should. I'm gonna throw the dice out the window tonight.
This happens. It sometimes happens.
I think we'll go to number 4.
Number 4. So yeah, it's along the same lines, mate. So you have reinvented yourself more than once. So what's the biggest moment that forced, say, the biggest shift?
When we repatriated and we came back to Australia in 2004, Tilly would have been about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old, and Ange, my wife, and I were just, I'd sort of lined up work before I came back. I was going to manage some holiday apartment properties here, so similar to what I was already doing. But I really just wanted to get out of hospitality. I'd really had a gut full of working weekends and not being there at Christmas time. And now with a young family, I was determined we've got to try and do this. So Angie's brother-in-law at the time, he owned a print shop, screen printing place, an embroidery place, and he wanted to sell and go. And I just looked at it and thought, well, I know nothing about it, but can't be any friggin' harder than what I've just come from. So I just, we'll buy it. We'll just jump in and do it. And we had it for 20 odd years, and only sold it a couple of years ago. But it was a business that was started by a lady in the town, it had already had a history before we got it. We held it for the longest, and we probably built it, to a big organisation, but it was still a local business, and we were a great team. Like Ange, my managerial side of things, and then Ange is so creative that she just taught herself to become the graphic designer, and she did all the design work. So it was both of us reinventing ourselves out of that industry, and just doing whatever it took. We even lived upstairs above the factory, so. People talk about small business and say, oh, business owners, they make so much money and they do this, but there's a lot of sacrifices along the way. It's not an easy route.
It was, mate, it was a very successful business, Greg, and that's where we met when I came in as a customer, mate. And we both lived in Port Macquarie and Lake Cat Eye for a long time. How did you guys keep that business so successful? Because we've seen a lot of businesses come and go in a small town. How did you guys keep it so strong, mate?
I think we just looked after really high maintenance customers like yourself, Troy. It's probably where.
Yep. I think at one point I was your easiest customer too, wasn't I, mate? I was very I was very clear with my directions, mate.
No, he said high maintenance. That's what I heard.
No. I was easy, mate.
Yeah. In fact, when the podcast came out and it said roll the dice, I thought, and I listened to the first episode, and you guys were saying, "Oh, we'll tell you later on where that came from." And I'm thinking, yeah, I know where it came from. Troy's from Bankstown. He used to drive around with fluffy dice hanging off his rear vision mirror. That's probably the roll.
No.
I love the different versions, and mate, I think it's great, mate. I think everyone that comes on should have their own idea on what it means. Yeah. And you know what? I love those fluffy dice too, mate. But I never had any.
That ain't it.
No, but I love it.
Definitely not it.
I love it.
Rumor that I'm starting.
That's definitely not it. Someone will get it one day. Yeah, it's not going to go far. Troy boy, we'll have a look at 3, I reckon.
So number 3, so mate, and I knew you were a little bit involved in this, but mate, you played OzTag at the highest level. Mate, what's the moments that still gives you goosebumps about that time in your life?
Yeah, look, it was kind of weird because I always loved sport, and I didn't get much of a chance to being an apprentice chef. You all of a sudden you can't combine being an apprentice chef and playing sport on the weekend because you can't make trainings. You're working on Saturdays, so I had to make a choice. So I pretty much had to put that behind me, but it worked out pretty good for me because by the time I came back and then started to get into things like tag and stuff like that, my body wasn't busted like a lot of my mates who continued to play weekend footy and stuff like that. Their knees were buggered, their shoulders were buggered. So yeah, it was just in a really good opportunity for me, and I just love team sports. I always have, playing with the team and being involved with the team, and so yeah, you just got into it and managed to. I think we took our first team from Port to the State Cup, and I don't think we won a game. I think we got beat every single game. And I think it was year 2 we took a team away, and I think we had a draw with Parramatta, and we couldn't stop jumping up and down. And the Parramatta guys are looking at us going, what are you guys going on about? Like, well, this is the first time we haven't won a game, but we haven't actually lost a game. So it was from very humble beginnings, and then time just went on, and we started to hone our craft, and a couple of guys came up from Sydney. Actually, one of the guys, Steve Van Gammon, who I do Catch Pro Vans with, he's a Hall of Famer, and he really gave us a bit more of an understanding of how the game was played, and once we sort of got that, we started to get a lot of success, and then from that success at state and national level, then selections started to happen for the Aussie team, and I was lucky that I was quick enough, and speed makes a big difference in the game, so just started getting selected, and I probably would have played a lot more years than I did, trans-Tasman tests and stuff like that, but it's just time away from work and family, and it's not like no one's paying for you to go, but yes, yeah, standing on the field and listening to the national anthem, and playing against Japan and playing against other countries, it was awesome, a lot of fun, and just playing, sometimes getting to play with ex-NRL players was a bit of a buzz too, or playing against them if they were playing because they'd always have an Indigenous Australian side. So Cliffy Lyons, or Rod De Silva, all these guys would jump into the Indigenous side. Mate, they were a handful. No matter how old they get, they're a handful. They've still got all the skills. Somehow they still remain fit enough. Even they're having cigarettes at half time, having a durry at half time, they still come on. How are you doing it?
The thing about OzTag is here I come. It's just like rugby league. You can push up, you can run off, and you can find a gap. You can it's chip and chase. You can catch and pass. You can do everything. But mate, how big a skill is it to grab that tag? Like, that used to kill me. I couldn't grasp the fact that there are blokes out there who are so skilled at that, and the rest of their game wasn't that hot.
Yeah. Well, no, definitely the defensive side of things, and especially you get a lot of touch players that will come across the tag, and they get frustrated because they can't get the tag because they're so used to just being able to sort of just reach out and just touch somebody, no matter where you touch them. And that's why tag was so good. It was developed by Perry Haddock when he was coaching at Cronulla, and he developed it pretty much as a training a training program to stop so much contact and injuries happening in training. That was why he started it. But you need to get your feet in the right position, and if your right hand's leading out to get a tag, your left hand has to follow. And that's not what everyone wanted to tag one-handed, and that was never it's like a low percentage thing to do. But they're the differences that you start to learn from the people within the game that really understand it well. And once you started to learn that, the game seemed a lot simpler. When you coach to do the skill level the right way.
How many fingers did you break, mate, over the years?
I've got a couple of dodgy ones that don't go back the other way, but no, I was pretty lucky. Actually. I was pretty lucky. Yeah. But I
so between that and chopping them off with a knife,
yeah, or getting them bitten off, no, it's no, I didn't get a lot of.
It's
all
right. Troy, 5, mate. Let's see if we can get through this.
So number 5. So Greg, a big part of your life now, mate, and has been for the last few years. So you're involved with Self-Seen, which is changing men's lives. Mate, what are the conversations men still aren't having but should be?
I think the awareness now is out there. I think anyone that doesn't know about mental wellness or men's mental health or women's mental health, or living under a rock, there's so many people. There's not many people that haven't been touched, sadly, by someone suiciding or having mental health issues. So the awareness stuff is there. The hardest part is our culture. As Aussie men, our culture's still there where there's still that sense of a weakness to speak up. There's a weakness to need help. To not be coping is a weakness. So I think the conversations that they're just simple ones. They're just to remain connected to whatever you're doing. Whether it be throwing a footy around, whether it be just going and having a coffee once a week and checking in with each other, and just remaining connected with people, because that way, when we see the disconnect, then we know we know when something's not right. When somebody starts to move away from that connection. But conversation-wise, I think we're getting better at it. I think we're getting better because I think a lot of the guys that are standing up, Ben Cudmore, you know, who I co-founded Self-Seen with, Ben's told his story unequivocally. Like he's not held back on anything. When he did his first episode of the podcast, Mental Health Matters, he pretty much just laid it all bare. Like I know there was family members that wouldn't talk to him after it because he was so honest and brutal about it. They were offended, and but he was like, "I'm at rock bottom. I'm telling the story because I don't want any other men to suffer this way." And that's what made the self-seen movement work so well, and continues to work to this day because it's guys like that that are willing to tell the story, and other guys look and go, "Well, if Ben can do it, you know, why can't I? You know, if it's okay for Ben, you know, then it's okay for me." And sadly, we've got to do that. We've got to be vulnerable to. We've got to show our vulnerability so other people can also understand that being vulnerable is okay. It's not a weakness. It's quite human to have faults, to have fears, to have questions, and you know, so it's just creating safe spaces for. And there's a lot of organisations out in Australia doing it. You know, just creating safe spaces for men, and I think in the regional area that's where it's really a struggle. You know, when you see these farmers are on properties and they might have, I don't know, 50, 80, 100 acres, and the nearest house is 20 minutes away. How often does somebody see that guy? Where's his social interaction and his connection? So and people wonder why we're losing so many farmers because it's so hard for them. But it's also they're not used to having to require connection, and so when things start going wrong and life just gets so hard and the financials get so hard, they've got no one to turn to.
Yep. Look, it's an amazing organisation, and what you guys are doing in the region is fantastic. And you've expanded over to Margaret River also, Greg.
Yeah, just one of the guys that was in our group. It's not our plan to expand necessarily, but organically he left, and about 3 years ago, and I joked with him when he left, and I said, "Once you get settled, let me know, and I'll send over the self-seen flags, and you can start up." And he was a bit like Ben over there in the Margaret River. That's where he was from, so he was well connected, and he started up over there. So yeah, going good. And another guy's just started up just this week, I think, down at for another friend of Ben's, down towards the Nelson's Bay, I think. Yeah, he wants to start men's circles, and that's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be a major thing. It can be just getting together and having coffee once a week. It doesn't need to be much. It's all about connection and feeling a part of something more than just yourself. So when things
it's really good, and the walk along.
There you go.
How do they find you? Like, how does people get involved?
Most of it's through social media, word of mouth, in our local community, and we have a hub which go over an old gym. So we've got a hub now where we've got gym equipment, a couple of saunas, a couple of ice bars, and the guys can just access that 24/7, and they pay a small membership fee. So word just spreads. It's a very hard thing to just grow without. It's just got to grow as it. You can't force people to come into that space. When they're ready, they'll step in, and we just got to be ready for them when they step in.
Yeah. Okay. Troy,
and here it is. Are we there? This is your question, mate. This is always this is you, mate. This is you.
There's a number 6. It's a signature question. It's when you look back on your life so far, and it seems like you've done a fair bit, and I don't think we've covered half of it. But what's the moment where you truly did roll your dice? You may have spoken about it already, but what's the moment when you think you took the risk and you rolled the dice?
it's such a hard one to answer, isn't it? Like, yeah, I think for me, when I was working in Bundong in West Java in those early days, and I was pretty I was pretty much working non-stop. I was also partying a fair bit as well, and Troy knows this, but I have a daughter in Indonesia who's now 31, and we've got good contact again now for the last 10 or 11 years. But when her when her mum fell pregnant with her, we'd only sort of seen each other half a dozen times, so it wasn't like it was a big firm relationship. But her father was the general. The Indonesian army was Suharto's right-hand man, and when she decided we need to leave the country, I think I rolled the dice there and went, yeah, I think we need to go, and so we bailed, and it didn't work out. She ended up going back, but I felt like I rolled the dice and didn't really win there. I always thought I was a bit bulletproof, and I moved, and when it all fell apart, I kind of fell apart as well and had a bit of a breakdown. So I probably should have stayed where I was and or done it differently, but or moved to a different area. I don't know whether there was more support, but I was definitely young and thought I was bulletproof, and I think I rolled the dice there, and it didn't quite work out for me. But it has shaped me for who I am today, and I'm glad I have a beautiful daughter over there as well, and grandkids and stuff who I've just seen recently. So it's probably where it didn't quite work out at the time, but it did work out in the long run.
It's good, mate. You go, Troy.
No, I was going to say, but yeah, like Paul said, your journey is incredible, Greg, and we could probably talk to you for hours and hours, mate. I don't even think we've scratched the surface tonight, but what an insight into where you've been, mate, and absolutely incredible. Yeah,
we've it's probably the first time that neither of us have talked too much. So, Greg, you certainly have some stories in you, and we were pretty engrossed in what you were saying, mate. It was pretty good, mate. We really got to thank you so much for coming on. Again, you're the type of guest we want on this show. We want people to hear stories about not the usual suspects. We just want people to hear. Everyone's got a story, and you've certainly got a fair few of them. You can get Roll the Dice podcast on Spotify, Apple,
YouTube.
Where are we, Troy? YouTube, yes. Instagram, TikTok.
This is the best part, mate. We are so bad at this, and it's not getting any better.
And you can get
hit like, share, send it to one friend. Do something. Follow us.
Yeah, and also please follow the self-seen socials as well. We really,
absolutely.
If there's something that's touched you today, please follow up. And if you want any information, please follow us up, and we'll pass you on to Greg and his team. Greg, thank you so much. We're gonna exit this and get into that banging tune. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Whispers in the dark, the night ignites. A shadow game under neon lights. Step into the room, heart beats like a drum. Fate's on the edge, nowhere to run. Eyes meet the stairs, Emotions in the air, every move's a gamble. Do you dare? Feel the rush, the thrill inside. No turning back, no place to hide. Hands on the table, time to choose. In this game, you win or lose. Roll the dice, take two, make your move. Chasing chances, nothing to prove. Spin the wheel,
Break the air,
break the ice.
life's a game.
Life's a gamble, roll the dice.
Echoes of the past, lessons learned in pain.